Ladies and gentlemen, breaking developments tonight out of Baghdad. The Iraqi government, in coordination with the central bank and security agencies, has announced a sweeping crackdown on dollar smuggling operations, a problem that has plagued the country for years, draining hard currency reserves and destabilizing the value of the Iraqi dinar. Authorities say new rules are being put in place to stop the illegal flow of US dollars out of Iraq's borders. For months, investigators have tracked how dollars purchased legally inside the country, through official auctions or banks, were being smuggled into neighboring nations, especially Iran, Syria, and Turkey, where they fetched higher rates on the black market. This activity not only enriched smugglers, but also contributed to a widening gap between Iraq's official exchange rate and the parallel market rate, fueling inflation and eroding public confidence in the dinar. The new crackdown includes stricter monitoring of banks, tighter oversight at border crossings, and harsher penalties for anyone caught moving large amounts of foreign currency without proper documentation. For the first time, Iraq is also requiring banks and currency exchange houses to provide detailed data on dollar transactions in real time, allowing regulators to detect suspicious patterns before the money leaves the country. Officials believe this step is crucial to protecting Iraq's foreign currency reserves, which are largely generated from oil sales. With global oil prices fluctuating, Baghdad cannot afford to lose billions of dollars each year to smuggling networks. By cutting off these illicit flows, the government hopes to keep more dollars inside the country, stabilize exchange rates, and reduce pressure on ordinary Iraqis who have seen the cost of imported goods rise steadily. But the crackdown will not be easy. Smuggling operations in Iraq are not small, one-off schemes. They are highly organized, sometimes backed by political and tribal connections, and often linked to powerful external actors. The U.S. Treasury has previously accused certain groups inside Iraq of channeling smuggled dollars to sanctioned entities in Iran and Syria. For Baghdad, confronting this issue means not only an economic challenge, but a political one. Public reaction so far has been mixed. On one hand, many Iraqis welcome the move, hoping it will bring down the price of everyday essentials and close the gap between the official rate and the black market rate. On the other hand, traders and importers worry the new rules could slow down access to dollars they legitimately need for business, potentially leading to shortages or delays in paying suppliers abroad. Economists stress that the success of this crackdown will depend on two things: enforcement and transparency. If authorities apply the rules fairly without favoritism, and if banks cooperate fully, Iraq could see real progress. But if corruption undermines the system, smugglers may simply find new routes, and the dollar drain could continue. For now, Baghdad is sending a strong signal both to its citizens and to international partners. The era of uncontrolled dollar smuggling must end. The question remains, will these new rules be enough to finally bring Iraq's currency market under control? Or is this just the opening round in a much longer battle? Now that Iraq has announced these tough new measures, the real question is, what happens next? To understand the stakes, we need to dig deeper into how dollar smuggling works and why it has been such a thorn in Iraq's economy. For years, the central bank has relied on what is called the currency auction system. In simple terms, oil revenues earned in US dollars are sold to commercial banks, exchange houses, and businesses that need dollars to pay for imports. On paper, this should keep trade flowing smoothly. But in reality, many of those dollars never make it into legitimate business transactions. Instead, they are siphoned off, packed into suitcases, or transferred through shell companies and sent across Iraq's borders. Why? Because outside Iraq, the US dollar often fetches a higher value, especially in countries under sanctions like Iran or Syria. For smugglers, this difference creates an easy profit. Buy dollars in Baghdad at the official rate, smuggle them out, and sell them abroad for a margin. The losers in this game are ordinary Iraqis because the more dollars leave the country, the less stable the exchange rate becomes at home. Prices for food, medicine, electronics, and fuel, all heavily import-dependent, rise as the dinar weakens against the dollar. The central bank's new rules aim to stop exactly this cycle. But enforcement is where the challenge lies. Iraq has long struggled with weak borders, where corruption among customs officials allows smugglers to pass freely. Trucks, cars, and even convoys disguised as legitimate trade often carry hidden stacks of dollars. The government now says it will station more inspectors at checkpoints and deploy digital tracking systems to follow large cash movements. Whether that will be enough is still uncertain. Another layer is international pressure. The United States Treasury Department has been urging Iraq to clamp down on dollar smuggling for years, worried that U.S. banknotes are indirectly funding sanctioned groups. In fact, Washington has already restricted which Iraqi banks can access dollar auctions, cutting off several institutions it accused of shady transactions. So, Baghdad's crackdown is not only about domestic stability, it's also about maintaining credibility with global financial partners. If the U.S. loses confidence, Iraq risks seeing even tighter restrictions on dollar flows, which could choke the economy further. For businesses inside Iraq, the rules create new headaches. Imagine you are a small importer in Basra, trying to bring in spare parts from Dubai. You need dollars to pay your supplier, but now every transfer faces more scrutiny. Banks demand proof of invoices, customs forms, and tax clearances. While this reduces smuggling, it also slows legitimate trade. That delay often translates into higher costs, which again filter down to the consumer. This is why many shopkeepers, traders, and even citizens on the street remain skeptical. They've heard promises of reform before. What they want to see is results. A narrowing gap between the official exchange rate, currently around 1,310 dinars per dollar, and the black market rate, which often runs 50 to 150 dinars higher. If the crackdown can close that gap, it will prove effective. If not, frustration could boil over. Public sentiment is fragile. Already, there have been murmurs of protest in local markets, where vendors say the cost of imports is becoming unbearable. If the crackdown accidentally restricts too much supply of dollars, Iraq could face short-term shocks. Rising food prices, delays in fuel imports, and shortages of key goods. Economists warn that if mishandled, the new policies could trigger inflation rather than cure it. But there's also hope. If Iraq can cut off the smuggling networks, billions of dollars that would have left the country could instead circulate inside the economy. That means more stability for the dinar, greater purchasing power for citizens, and less dependence on black market dealers. Some experts argue this could even pave the way for long-term reforms, including a gradual strengthening of the dinar if oil revenues stay strong. The bigger picture is about trust. Iraqis need to believe that their financial system works for them, not for smugglers or corrupt elites. That's why transparency, publishing data on auctions, enforcing penalties equally, and holding officials accountable will be critical. Without it, the new crackdown risks becoming just another policy announced with fanfare but forgotten in practice. So, as of tonight, Iraq stands at a crossroads. The central bank and the government have drawn a line against dollar smuggling, but the effectiveness of this fight will only be clear in the weeks and months ahead. Will exchange rates stabilize? Will prices cool down? Or will smugglers find new loopholes, forcing Iraq to return to the same cycle of crisis? One thing is certain. The Iraqi dinar's fate is tied directly to this struggle. If the crackdown succeeds, Iraq could finally regain some control over its currency market. If it fails, the pressures on the dinar, and on ordinary Iraqis, could intensify even further.